All right. I think we got this. All right. So, welcome to the review show of last night's historic event, TNA Slammiversary. Man, just to start off, what a great show it was, man. I had a blast last night. I know, there's a lot of controversy, obviously, with NXT winning both the women's and Trick Williams keeping his men's World Heavyweight Championship. Definitely not how I would have done it. It's not, I think, the best idea, especially with the Santana part, because I think just the momentum he had going. But, in comparison, let's just see what happens and see what kind of story that they're about to tell. Like I said in my preview show, what I was hoping for is what things that were going to happen last night at Slammiversary were going to be the beginning of stories that were going to be told and finished at Bound for Glory. And that's how they can bridge their two biggest shows of the year, from Slammiversary to Bound for Glory. That is still very possible. This whole thing could be a setup of now TNA is going to go invade NXT and WWE. That could be a thing. And I hope it does. It feels like they're leaning into it. I know Santino Marella mentioned that he's going to be at NXT in Houston. And then this Thursday night, it is a live episode. So we don't know exactly what's all going to happen. But I will say this. Yesterday, I think it was, whenever they first started advertising matches that were going to happen on Thursday night, whenever I saw the Santana versus Joe Hendry match announced, it had me a little worried that Trick was going to keep the title, because that match, like, they weren't going to then do a title match. I don't know. I had this gut feeling that Trick was going to keep it, and then probably what's going to happen is that will be a number one contenders match now. Would be my guess, would be Joe Hendry versus Mike Santana. Whoever wins that will then face Trick Williams one-on-one, because what they're going to say is the triple threat was the reason that Trick was able to cheat, or kind of play the whole fake injury thing and get the cheap win. So then, now you're probably going to have Joe and Mike probably in a talking segment talking about how, it's your fault. First it was going to be, I bet you Joe probably comes out and says, Santana, this is all your fault. You couldn't just let me go get it by myself. You had to put yourself in this match to make it a three-way and blah, 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 blah. And that will probably lead to that match, and then probably like a number one contendership match, and then the winner of that will probably go face Trick Williams. Who knows? Will it be Emergence in August, or is it going to be something that will happen in October? I don't know. But like I said, there's a lot of things that they can. There's a lot of different places they can take the story to. That I'm actually very, 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 very excited to see where they do take it. I like to look at things in a more optimistic way. So I'm not going to sit here and try to poo-poo this necessarily and be like, well, we're just going to get now weeks and weeks and months of more just NXT showing their dominance. No, maybe this is now going to lead to the, not dominance, but TNA maybe getting their, together and going down there and becoming a one front and taking on NXT and just being like, nah, look, you caught us sleeping and now you woke us up. We're coming for our titles, and we're coming for some of your guys' titles now too. Stuff like that. I think that'd be great, and hopefully it does happen. But let's go ahead. Let's jump into what Slammiversary was last night, match by match, kind of little segment by segment, if you will. Let's start off with, of course, the pre-show. If you guys watched my preview show, I mentioned the panel thing. I hate that just kind of cheap looking panel setup on the front stage, the way that they do that. Again, just not huge on that. And then like the guest that they had was like a member from Skid Row. I mean, look, if you're not maybe 40 years old and up, you probably have never heard of Skid Row. You don't know who Skid Row is. He's not a musical artist, but I'm just saying, like, at least that special guest was somebody that's relevant, that's in during current stuff, doing, he's got his own kind of wrestling podcast or just podcast that he talks a lot of wrestling on. He's in current movies and stuff like that. Maybe, I don't know. It just, that felt a little odd. But overall, the pre-show I thought was, pretty good. I will say I think the production quality for the most part was pretty good. I know there's that little mishap where I guess they cut to the backstage segment way too early, and the Iceman and the Elegance brand, weren't ready, or something. I don't know what went on there, but sometimes in live TV that stuff's gonna happen. I know it happens to TNA quite often, but it's also because they don't go live a lot. So whenever they do their random live shows, the mishaps happen a little bit more. But I've been watching a lot of WWE here lately. They've had plenty of miscues and bad stuff that happens. Like on NXT, Masha's mic didn't work. And it just kind of gets kind of pushed to a side because it's WWE. I mean, look, they are professionals. They do a very good job, but stuff does happen. But whenever it happens, like with TNA, everybody's like, typical TNA, there we go. Like, yeah, okay. Like, I'm not sitting here trying to say, like, they never have mishaps, but it's just, kind of gets tiring whenever you keep seeing it. Because then whenever, somebody like me, that I get it whenever things happen, but whenever it does happen. But on the pre-show, we got a couple of matches. We got, they started off with that Knockouts tag match. I thought the Inspiration was going to win this and take those titles and kind of push it, but to my surprise, and I'm not mad about this at all, man, the Elegance brand won. I thought it was a great, fun match. They're really booking the Elegance brand strong, doing a good job. And by strong, I'm talking about, like, they usually have good matches. Yes, there's always a, dusty finish, if you will. There's always some interference by M and by the Concierge, the Iceman. But that's the whole point. Whenever you're a heel group, like, that kind of will help make you look strong. And whenever you're, as a group, always, your opponents need to know that they need to have eyes in the back of their heads, on the side of their heads, because they're going to have people coming around from all over the place that could cost you this match. But yeah, I just thought the match though was pretty good. Then they were interrupted with an impromptu match of Eric Young versus the Hometown Man. God, oh man, that was great. And then of course the Hometown Man won, and I don't know necessarily where this is gonna go with EY and the Hometown Man, because it's like now all of a sudden it's only Eric Young that, like, cares who's actually under the mask. Whenever before it was kind of like the System, now they kind of switched that over to being Eric and him caring about that. So, in my little head of fantasy booking, I'm really hoping this leads to maybe EY getting so obsessed with it, finally does unmask, reveal it to be Cody Deaner, and then somehow, in some form or fashion, gets Deaner to be Deaner, but in the Northern Armory, and kind of almost rehash the Violent by Design stuff. Obviously do it differently, but now have that kind of be Eric's new group as the Northern Armory, but make it a full, like, faction with, like, 4 of them. Because to me, some of my favorite Deaner stuff, like, I think some of his best, like, serious pro wrestler work was in Violent by Design. Not whenever he was necessarily the leader, but whenever he was with Eric Young in Violent by Design. Whenever he was the leader, it was also still, pretty good. It wasn't, like, amazing, but it was still pretty good stuff. Whenever don't get me wrong, I love him as the comedy gimmick too. He's hilarious. He does a really good job at that. Just some of it, like, the comedy stuff, and I don't even know if you want to call some of the stuff that he was doing whenever it was the People's Choice stuff, if you would call that comedic, but I just definitely didn't like it a whole lot because it came off as I'm super corny and I'm very 80s baby face. So it never, and it felt like it stuck out, or like it didn't fit in what TNA wrestling does with everything else in their program, and not necessarily a good way. Like it stands out great. Like, you know, if they were still doing like the Swingers Dungeon, or, you know, the Swingers Casino, or, you know, some of that, what led to that stuff with the Wrestle House stuff, you know, that stuff stuck out. It wasn't like everything else that they were doing, but in a good way, because they were good separate, almost separate segments with almost like a separate roster of people that would lead to different matches, but just good funny segments. The Some of the other stuff wasn't necessarily all that great, but that's kind of what I'm hoping for from that. Maybe we'll get to see that. I don't know where this is going to go, but it just seems odd that Eric Young is like so obsessed with the hometown man and that it's actually Diener and stuff like that. Then we get kind of the first kind of, I guess you could call it head scratching moment of the night. You know, we have the 6-man tag match. I'm calling it Team TNA versus Team Fourth Rope. With their entrance, and then kind of, you know, they're already kind of holding up the four, like their fourth rope. It does kind of feel like they're going to be a faction. You know, my prediction of maybe the Good Brothers coming out and doing stuff and being part of Fourth Rope obviously didn't come to fruition. But they still won, which is kind of odd. And only odd because of how quick it was, and then it was Enzo pinning Jake something. I mean, you know, I get it. Like, I totally get possibly where they're going with this. And if they are going with them being kind of a faction that's kind of invading TNA, you know, maybe that's kind of also plays into this whole overarching maybe stories in TNA that, you know, TNA needs to buckle down and become TNA. Kind of like what Santana's been saying as far as like, I want to get TNA back to its roots where it was about, you know, this and passion and blah, blah, blah. I mean, he hasn't necessarily made that like a major focal point with his gimmick, but he has mentioned it often, especially once he was going after the TNA title. So maybe, you know, he can kind of step up and do some of the stuff and kind of be that leader that then could lead to him finally winning that title whenever they decide to do that. Let's see here. Now we're going to get into the actual pay-per-view. And we started off with the 8-man tag match, the Dark State versus the System and Matt Cardona. Another good fun match. I thought it was pretty good, and the System did win. So maybe that could have been like the first red flag of, oh, they had Dark State lose, so I wonder if it's because other NXT people are going to win. Because that obviously was the case. Then we go to Tessa versus Indy. This match was awesome. This match was really, really good. Indy got the win, which, you know, that's kind of what I figured. Because Tessa has Tessa can take the loss, especially to people that are also like well-known, well-accomplished pro wrestlers. But Tessa can take those type of losses because all she has to do, especially with her being a heel, she can jump right back into the Knockouts title picture kind of whenever she wants. Because she's clearly like one of the best women pro wrestlers out there. She, you know, is the only woman to hold the men's world heavyweight championship. So she's got all these accolades that will make her very credible regardless of what she does until they decide to get her into those type of main event stories. So she can take that loss. That's kind of why I figured that would happen. It gives Indy like a really good win, especially early on in her TNA career. And then maybe Indy can be somebody that's going to start maybe popping back up in NXT to go after JC Jane, kind of thing, you know. We'll see where that goes. But Indy Hartwell with the win. And again, I thought it was just a really, really good match. Then we get to just an insanely good match. Or I'm sorry, I forgot. These are not in order. I totally forgot about that. I just kept my notes from the preview show and just put down who won and my thoughts with each one. So I just realized I'm not going in the order that actually was last night. I'm going through the order. But stay with me. You guys know. You guys already know. If you watched it, you know what order it was. So this is a great match to kick off the show, though. This was Cedric Alexander versus Mustafa Ali. Man, those guys put on an amazing match. They're both great pro wrestlers. That finish where Tasha was going to come in and get the steel chair. Cedric gives her the lumbar check, like, and she goes flying off of that thing, just for then Mustafa to hit his splash. Oh my gosh, that was great timing. This hopefully is not done. I want to see more Cedric versus Ali. Ali won, makes the the fourth order look strong. This is kind of why I figured, as much as I picked Cedric to win, I thought he was probably going to get like that kind of good win, because then I was almost kind of thinking maybe they were going to do that double swerve back, which they didn't, obviously. But this did make Ali and Fourth Order look like they are back, cohesive as one, and strong, maybe stronger than ever. Let's see here, what we got next. Oh, we've got the X Division title match. Leon Slater versus Moose. What a freaking match. This match was awesome. Again, and this whole night just had matches that were just really, really good. Super entertaining. This was insane good. The way that, they went with Moose's, obviously Moose can do a lot of like kind of faster, high flying style moves. He's super athletic. He can do that type of stuff. But the way that they still did like his power, and Leon Slater kind of using his flying ability to give him a power set, I just thought was just really good. The psychology of the match was really, really good. What a way to put Leon Slater over. And then, no surprise here, because like I said, I figured this was going to happen, as far as this is whenever AJ was going to make his moment. It was going to be after the X Division Championship match. Of course, I would have still loved to see the whole AJ versus Moose, maybe at Bound for Glory kind of thing, and he comes out more to like save Leon. But regardless, this was such a great freaking moment after this match too, to have AJ finally home. Like I said in my other show, was AJ's is my favorite TNA wrestler of all time. He's one of my top 5 favorite pro wrestlers, period, no matter, what era or from what company. Man, and like I knew whenever he was going to come out, like I was going to have emotion about it, as far as like, man, I was probably going to be grinning ear to ear and just be like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. But then like, I just started like tearing up, man. Like, I don't know, like I wasn't like in a full cry, but like, man, I was like wiping the rain from my eyes. You know what I'm saying? I just was kind of surprised that I was that emotional about it. But man, it was, what a moment, man, just to see him there talking, doing his thing, and doing a hell of a job of putting Leon Slater over, and really kind of giving him like his flowers. The crowd was awesome too, just the fact, and I think what kind of hit me was the fact that, yeah, we got the Get Ready to Fly, we got his TNA theme, his entrance. That was really cool. That was awesome. Man, so good. Let's see, then we've got the 4-way ladder match, and I thought the Hardys were going to win, and they did. And this match, again, wow. This might, I don't know if it was, all 3 of those matches were probably right there for match of the night. This 4-way ladder match. Cedric Alexander versus Mustafa Ali, and then the X Division title match. Those three were probably right up there for match of the night. Some insane, crazy spots, and it wasn't just like the Hardys doing this either. I mean, First Class putting on just AJ Francis doing that moonsault off the ladder. Whenever both First Class like fell and crashed through a ladder, that was insane. AJ Francis, the way he fell into his ladder was just that was rough to look at. But so glad he's okay, because today he's on Ariel Helwani's show, which again is still awesome that TNA is still doing this type of tour, this media tour thing. Man, just couldn't be happier about all that stuff that went down last night with just the attendance record, AJ being there. It was just it was awesome hearing all that stuff. Then we got the first of the kind of things, and that was Masha versus JC Jane. JC Jane won, took the titles. I just, the match was fine. It was still good. There's a couple spots there that, but typical thing of, the one thing is, it's not like the TNA wrestlers just lost outright. There's a lot of shenanigans, a lot of interference, a lot of this and that. So, it's not like they just won super clean. But it's just one of those things of, it kind of, you sat there and kind of, okay. But what if, man, now I don't know what's going to happen. Which then does lead us to the World Heavyweight Championship match, the triple threat. I had Mike Santana winning this. I think everybody kind of did. They always kind of say, like, especially on a big, special, epic type of historical night like that, you want to leave the fans leaving happy. And I don't think any of the fans left happy, because they were all ready to crown Mike Santana as the TNA World Heavyweight Champion. And, like I said, initially, I wasn't necessarily super happy about it. But whenever I sat there, I was kind of like, okay, well, now this has got to lead to TNA versus NXT. Like, it has to lead to, this is now what the story is. The story is now you're going to have companies butting heads, and boom. That's the only thing that they can do now coming out of this. Worth it. To really kind of see this back and forth. Maybe each invades each other a little bit more. We kind of see more of an integration of both shows. So where now you got to watch NXT on Tuesdays and you got to watch Thursday nights with TNA to kind of make sure you're following along with the story and know what's going to happen next. I think that's smart. I think it helps TNA get on the CW and do more of that type of stuff. I thought, I was starting to think yesterday that now that there was all of a sudden, now that there's a story that was breaking about naming specific networks like Tubi, Fox Sports 1, and A&E, that, so maybe these are getting leaked, so then they're probably going to make the official announcement now at Slammiversary. And then that didn't come, so I'm thinking back now to my thought whenever Carlos first said 60 to 90 days. 60 to 90 days pretty much leads up to Bound for Glory. I have a feeling that is definitely where they will announce their new TV deal. That's probably whenever it'll be done. That's probably whenever they'll announce it. But this all could lead up to help start getting more people at these networks, eyes on there. And I think it's also kind of like a plan to get more eyes on TNA wrestlers in the TNA program. Because now if you can get people that love watching NXT to start watching TNA on a more consistent basis, and now they have these viewership numbers, maybe some better viewership numbers that they can put forward whenever they're talking to these networks. I think that's kind of the plan and the idea. I think it could work. I think it could get us get TNA a very good TV deal. And again, I hope that's what the reasoning of this is. With the whole Santana, I do think I'm also a very big believer in, striking the iron while it's hot type thing. And Mike Santana, like, everybody was ready to cheer and be happy and see him win. That's why I think they should still have done that. But, they still could have done that, and then maybe like Trick and Darkstay come out, jump him and Henry, and then steal the title. And he still says, "Well, I'm still the real World Heavyweight Champion." No, you didn't. You're not the title. I have this title, so I stole it. So now that makes me still the TNA champ, kind of thing. And I think you still could have done this kind of maybe what they're going to do and do a TNA NXT kind of versus style stories going forward. But in saying that, if they were really trying to get over the fact that they want people mad that Santana didn't win and people mad at NXT, then that's exactly how you should have booked that. So it's more, I'm not necessarily saying that it's the wrong, like they booked it wrong. It just depends on where their mindset is creatively, on where they're going with this, and what reaction they were wanting. You know what I'm saying? So, I'm not obviously there. I don't know any of their creative stuff, so I can't speak to it. So that's why, like, I can sit here and be nuanced about this and say, yeah, that sucks. I wish they wouldn't have done that. I don't necessarily like that. But then but let's tune in Tuesday. Let's tune in Thursday. They're both live shows. Should be interesting. Let's see where they're going to go with this and try to figure out maybe the reason why they booked that finish the way that they did. I don't necessarily, and I didn't necessarily like the fake injury, jump in last second, get the pin, roll back out finish. I think somebody kind of interfere and do it maybe that way. I don't know. I just don't like those type of like really abrupt, kind of out of nowhere finishes like that. I say that because I say that even though it was kind of an abrupt and odd ending to this Cedric and Ali match, but that one's a little different because it was so synced up and it was just done really well. And it was more of like high impact. This one's just, hey, let me push you out of the ring and I'm going to pin the guy instead of you kind of thing. I'm not huge on that. Because it just kind of ends. And then you're just kind of sitting there like, what? Wait, what? Huh? And then it just starts digesting. And then you're like, yeah, I didn't like that. Not at all. But anyway, let's see here. What else do I got? Check my notes real quick. So also like the whole surprises and stuff. Obviously there weren't really a whole lot. The only one that I said that I really felt like was a definite was probably going to be the Natty showing up because she does have a match at Bloodsport with Masha. But one thing that I do, and I hope that more others will start doing this or will do too. But even though I see it like on social media and sometimes even on different, YouTube shows and channels, these rumors will pop up, about this person's going to show up or that person for any company in WWE, AEW, anywhere. Like it just happened at Evolution where, a lot of people were starting to say, oh, they're going to have TNA wrestlers involved. And then no TNA wrestlers showed up. The rumor was coming in, WWE is also in talks to send over 2 main roster people. No, didn't. And that doesn't ruin Slammiversary for me. I can get caught up in like the thoughts and maybe the hype. That's fine. But I'm never going to get mad at a pay-per-view for not doing something that they never teased or promised. If it was just something on the internet of rumors by dirt sheet journalists, okay. I mean, I can hope. I can sit there and go, oh man, I hope that's what's going to happen. I really do. I can kind of get caught up in the theories and fantasy booking and doing all this stuff because that stuff is fun. But I'm never going to hold that show or that company responsible for not producing something that was never promised. So hopefully, I can talk you guys and anybody out there that's a wrestling fan into doing the same thing. All right, enjoy the shows for the shows. I guess the last thing I'll talk about here real quick is Bully Ray coming out. I'm excited for that match. I know, I don't necessarily think it's going to be like this awesome banger, but it's going to be kind of a cool, like, one last time, Dudley's Team 3D and TNA. Team 3D versus the Hardys. I think it's going to be awesome. And that's going to happen at Bound for Glory. So there's that first match that's being announced for Bound for Glory. It's going to take place in Lowell, Massachusetts. So let's hope that they can get some really good booking done and get it into being a really good show, and be another like really crazy, awesome night of pro wrestling and set another record maybe for attendance. Do all that stuff. So yeah, like I said last night, I thought it was a great pay-per-view. I had a great 4 hours. A lot of great wrestling. Super proud of everybody at TNA and what they're doing. To see that crowd was awesome. Hopefully everybody that was there last night also had a ton of fun. And yeah, so I probably won't do anything like any shows about NXT. I will probably do a review show from Impact, and then in that review show I'll talk about anything that might happen on NXT or not, and then of course the rest of what happens on Impact. It is a live show. I might go live right after, or I might go live on that Friday. Haven't quite decided yet, but I will kind of let you guys know what my decision ends up being whenever we get closer to Thursday, if I decide to go live right after Impact, or if I wait until the Friday afternoon whenever I get home from work. So but yeah, hope everybody has a good night, has a good Monday night. Watch Raw if you guys like watching WWE. If not, maybe rewatch Slammiversary. Go watch